everyone, welcome back. I am so excited to make this video today all about the controversial yet fascinating and wonderful history of the Miss South Africa organization. Before we get into all of that, please remember to subscribe and also follow me on Instagram. But today I felt so inclined to talk about the entire history of the Miss South Africa organization. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Before the Miss South Africa organization, as we know today, was established in 1956, a pictorial in South Africa called the Union's National Weekly held annual beauty competitions for women all over South Africa, and the most famous of which was Doris Ferrer-Mosca, who was, I would say, Miss South Africa 1923, according to the Union's National Weekly. It was obviously only an empty title, but it later evolved into the Miss South Africa that we know and love today. In 1956, however, the Miss South Africa organization was actually established with the goal of sending a candidate to the Miss World pageant each year. And it would remain this way until 1998, where the Miss South Africa organization finally acquired the Miss Universe license. Before that, the Miss Universe candidate for South Africa were sent by different organizations. The Miss Universe went through no less than 6 different organizations in South Africa since 1952 up to now. At one point, there were even 3 candidates from South Africa at Miss Universe. And you might be asking, well, how can that be? You'll have to wait for my next video all about the history of South Africa at Miss Universe. The very first Miss South Africa pageant in 1956 was only open to white women, and it would remain that way for the next 2 decades. You guys should see the clownery that the Miss World organization got up to in order to avoid accusations of racism and sympathies to the apartheid government in South Africa. The first Miss South Africa was Norma Foster, who unfortunately went unplaced at Miss World 1956. In 1957, Adele Creer secured a second runner-up placement, and in 1958, South Africa won its first Miss World crown through 18-year-old secretary Penelope Ann Cullen. She went on to get a lot of modeling gigs, but eventually returned to South Africa, got married, and had 5 sons. Her husband unfortunately passed away in 2019, but she's still alive and is now 81 years old. Throughout the next 11 years, South Africa got a series of top 15, top 7, top 11 and non-placements at Miss World. In fact, from 1963 to 1965, they did not place at all at Miss World. But none of that seems to matter when you listen to the absolute bullshit that I'm going to tell you next. By this point in time, many people around the world have been protesting South Africa's apartheid regime, which was designed to be oppressive and discriminatory towards people who were not white. This system of racism was also the reason why pageants like Miss South Africa wouldn't dare allow anyone who was not white. The Miss World organization's chairperson, Mr. Eric Morley, who is the current chairperson, Julia Morley's late husband, was questioned as to why he still allowed South Africa to compete at Miss World when the very requirements to enter the Miss South Africa pageants were racist and in accommodation of the apartheid regime. Somehow it was decided that South Africa would be sending 2 candidates to Miss World from that point forward. So there would be 1 white candidate, which would be Miss South Africa, and 1 black candidate, or candidate of color, I suppose, which was Miss Africa South. Isn't that just the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard? It's the fact that the Miss World organization would rather change their rules and have other countries all around the world obliged by this, although it was clearly very unfair, rather than just tell the Miss South Africa organization, listen, be more inclusive or don't come back. So in 1970, South Africa had two representatives at Miss World. Gillian Jessop, who was the white representative, she eventually ended up placing as fourth runner-up, and Pearl Jansen, who surpassed her white counterpart and placed as first runner-up. This was also the year that the first black Miss World was crowned, Jennifer Houston from Grenada. And unfortunately, nothing changed for Pearl after the competition, as she had to return to South Africa, where there were not really many opportunities for her to enter the entertainment industry as she's always dreamed. After apartheid was abolished, however, at the age of 58, she finally realized her dream of entering a music career. She's one of the main characters in the film Misbehavior, which is all about Miss World 1970 and the feminists who tried to ruin it. I really recommend going and watching this movie. It's actually quite good, even if you don't really like Miss World, because I find Miss World very boring. But it was quite a good movie, I must say. The Miss South Africa organization continued to send two candidates to Miss World for the next 5 years. And in 1974, the white representative of South Africa, Annelien Kriel, placed as first runner-up. However, the winner, Helen Morgan, resigned 4 days later. The organization had apparent knowledge that Helen Morgan was a single mother before they crowned her as Miss World 1974. But when she won, the father of her child gave interviews and painted an awful picture of her. And I guess she probably just felt like she had no choice but to resign. And so her first runner-up from South Africa became the new Miss World. But South Africa's success at Miss World wouldn't last long though, as in 1976, other countries around the world really got sick of the fact that South Africa were allowed to send two contestants and were basically accommodated for their racism and their apartheid values. Many countries boycotted Miss World that year. And finally, in 1977, the Miss South Africa organization decided to open the pageant for women of all races to compete. Although the pageant was now open to everyone, Miss South Africa 1977 was a white woman named Vanessa Vandenberg. She went unplaced that year. This was the year that people all around the world were really starting to get annoyed about South Africa's apartheid regime, and countries all around the world boycotted South Africa by cutting off all international trade relations, including participation in sports and beauty pageants. So although the Miss South Africa pageant was technically open to all races for about a year at this point, the Miss World organization decided to suspend South Africa from competing until apartheid was abolished. So for 12 years, from 1978 to 1990, South Africa did not compete at Miss World. But the show must go on, and the Miss South Africa organization still held a pageant each year and crowned 12 Miss South Africas during that time. Each and every one of them just so happened to be white. And two of them also competed at Miss Universe for some reason, but Miss Universe also decided to ban South Africa in 1985. Which is ironic because this year the Miss South Africa organization is under pressure to boycott Miss Universe, since Miss Universe 2021 is being hosted by Israel, which is currently run under a similar regime as apartheid South Africa. In 1991, South Africa was back at Miss World after the apparent end of apartheid. Diana Tilden Davis secured a second runner-up placement that year, and in 1992, after the pageant had seemingly been open to all races for 16 years, the first non-white Miss South Africa was crowned. She was a 23-year-old Cape-colored girl named Amy Kleinhans. Miss World was held at Sun City, South Africa that year, and Amy managed to reach a top 5 placement. She famously refused to walk with the then apartheid-era South African flag, and opted to walk with a white flag instead to symbolize peace. Nelson Mandela himself later reportedly thanked her for this. Amy married a New Zealand businessman named Leighton Curd and went on to have 4 children. 37 years after the first Miss South Africa was held, the very first black Miss South Africa was crowned in 1993. Jackie Mofokeng obviously experienced a lot of racism during her reign as Miss South Africa, but this didn't stop her from placing as first runner-up at Miss World 1993. And although apartheid was at an end at this point and schools were being integrated, universities were being integrated, workplaces were being integrated, this didn't stop a large part of the white population of South Africa from being racist and still having serious superiority complexes. To this day, Miss South Africas who do not fit a Eurocentric ideal of beauty are still ridiculed and deemed not beautiful by the older white generation of South Africans, and sometimes even people from my generation who grew up with this racism and who were indoctrinated by this philosophy of superiority. You guys know that I am a white Afrikaans South African woman, and I won't lie when I say that many generations of my family have benefited from apartheid. But I was also part of the first generation to grow up in an integrated society. I went to an integrated school all my life, but I was not allowed to have any black friends or any friends of color. Basically anyone who wasn't white I wasn't allowed to be friends with. And there's actually a really long story, and I think I've told it before, about my first non-white friend which I had in grade 2 when I was 8 years old. I'm not going to get into it, but suffice it to say that my parents were not pleased. It saddens me still that there are even people of my generation, the born free generation, who were not strong enough or brave enough to break away from these disgusting beliefs that their parents and older family members held about non-white people. I suppose the best we can all do is just to teach our own children differently. For the next few years, South Africa continuously placed at Miss World, and in 1998, the Miss South Africa organization finally acquired the Miss Universe license. And for a long time, the crowned Miss South Africa competed at both Miss Universe and Miss World when these two pageants were held at different times of the year, until this became impossible for obvious reasons. Kirishni Naicker, who was the first Indian Miss South Africa, placed in the top 10 at Miss Universe 1998 and in the top 5 at Miss World 1998. The next year, Sonia Rasiti placed as second runner-up at Miss World 1999 and in the top 5 at Miss Universe 1999. And the next few years serve as a lesson for all aspiring pageant queens as to the different personalities that these two pageants are looking for. Because although Miss South Africa 2000 Heather Joy Hamilton went unplaced at Miss World 2000, she managed to reach the top 10 at Miss Universe. And although Miss Universe 2001 Joanne Strauss went unplaced at Miss Universe, she reached the top 10 at Miss World. Miss South Africa 2002 Cindy Nell famously went unplaced at Miss World, but placed as second runner-up at Miss Universe 2003. The next 13 years saw South Africa reach a succession of top 10, top 15, and non-placements at Miss Universe, and things weren't going so well at Miss World either, as from 2003 to 2013 South Africa only reached the top 5 once in 2008 and had a second runner-up placement in 2009 thanks to Tatum Keshwa, which was just as well because that edition of Miss World was held in Johannesburg. In 2014, however, things were looking up for the Miss South Africa organization as Rolene Strauss won the first Miss World crown for South Africa since Annelien Kriel succeeded Helen Morgan in 1974. But if you want to get technical, it's the first real win since Penelope and Cullen in 1958. As you can see, no non-white South African representative has ever won the Miss World crown, and I'm hoping that will change soon. In 2017, of course, Demi-Leigh Nel-Peters became the first representative under the integrated Miss South Africa organization to be crowned Miss Universe. Adia van Heerden, who was Demi's first runner-up at Miss South Africa and who placed in the top 10 at Miss World where she represented South Africa, actually became the new Miss South Africa when Demi went on to bigger and better Miss Universe things. Before Demi, however, Margaret Gardner, who was Miss Republic of South Africa, was crowned Miss Universe 1978, but more about that in my next video all about South Africa's history at Miss Universe. I was only 20 when Demi won, and she was actually the reason why I fell in love with pageantry. Fun fact, after Demi's Miss Universe win, the Miss South Africa organization appointed her coach, Werner Wessels, as their creative director. Before this, he privately trained Miss South Africa 2011, Melinda Bum, who placed in the top 10 at Miss Universe 2011, as well as Rolene Strauss. The next year, in 2018, South Africa came so close to a back-to-back victory when Tamarin Green placed as first runner-up. This edition of Miss Universe holds a very special place in my heart, as it was the first one that I watched live and followed diligently. In 2019, South Africa made history when Zozibini Tunzi became the first non-white woman from South Africa to win the Miss Universe title, which she did with her short, natural hair, which was basically unheard of at the time. Zozibini is such an icon, and due to the worldwide bug in 2020, she ended up being the longest reigning Miss Universe of all time. In 2021, the Miss South Africa organization actually acquired the Miss Supranational license as well, and in their debut year, they reached a placement of second runner-up through the Miss SA 2020 first runner-up, Tata Musele, who was appointed to represent South Africa at Miss Supranational. This year, the Miss SA pageant expanded their inclusivity yet again and opened the pageant to trans women as well. Although Letlogonolo Machaba made the semi-finals this year, she sadly did not make it through to the top 10. And therefore, there has yet to be a trans woman competing on the actual Miss South Africa stage. The next Miss South Africa pageant is scheduled to be held in Cape Town on 16 October 2021. I don't really know why we still refer to Cape Town as the mother city, as it's only the mother city to... Never mind. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. It was so much fun researching the entire history of Miss South Africa. I hope you learned something. If I missed something, don't hesitate to tell me in the comments down below. Do remember to subscribe before you leave and like this video if you enjoyed it. Also, follow me on Instagram. Like I said, I post lots of fun stuff on there and I would love to have you. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!